Okay, guys. So I see a lot of people I know. That's great to see you again here. For the others, welcome to the Innovation Algebra meetups. We try and do it every 2 weeks or so. Um, this meetup is a little bit different from normal ones since it's more of an open conversation. Our previous meetups have been more along the lines of there is like a formal presentation. I would talk about something and we would have guest speakers. So uh, and the talks normally are, the sessions are normally 15 minutes tailgating, then main speaker, typically me, then guest speakers, and then people stay and talk afterwards. Today's talk is going to be different. It's going to be more of a conversation about innovation. So that's one topic. I threw out some very provocative statements there, question, will AI enable everyone to innovate, for example? And also a second part was just to see in the community, what people are doing, what interesting things are happening, and maybe for people that want to have help. I have a lot of people reaching out to me, but unfortunately, I don't have enough time to talk to all of them. So this is a great time to do that. Before we start, we actually have rules for this type of meeting. We're using rules that we developed as part of the Philosopher's Corner, which is a meetup that I ran last year. And there are 3 rules for Philosopher's Corner. So it's sort of focused on stuff we should not do in this meeting to keep it intellectual. So first of all, we try to discourage small talk. So let's not talk about trivial things. Second thing is no village talk. So we're not going to talk about other people, like in a small village or something. And the last one, which is a hard one, is no valley talk. By that, I mean no Silicon Valley talk. What does that mean? Well, a typical person in Silicon Valley promotes themselves, right? We're trained to do that. We talk about ourselves and what we're doing and how great we are and so on. There are forums where, and we probably will be able to do that after our official part of this meeting, but in this part, at least, we want to talk about ideas, right? And so we have these 3 rules, very simple. I know it's really hard to stick to them. And, of course, sometimes you just have to say your name and what you're doing and so on. That's fine, but let's try and, keep the conversation sort of at an interesting and intellectual level. These are sort of general rules that we've worked out. And if you've participated in the Philosopher's Corner before, you know that these conversations can be extremely rewarding. So it's also a very tough meetup for me to organize because, people are sort of say, I know rules and, should I speak up and so on. So people sort of slowly get into it and you'll get the hang of it. So actually, I'm just going to kick off a little bit to sort of set the tone by actually showing a map. This is just a sort of a conversation starter. Hope you guys can see my screen here. Can somebody confirm?
We can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So, oops. Let me just. So I made this what I call innovation map. With sort of the idea is that, hey, there's just a lot of stuff happening. The last 4 months has probably been the most interesting part of my life, and maybe for many other people's too, and maybe even the most productive time of my life, that AI has suddenly enabled me to do all sorts of things, invent new things in half a day. I mean, it's crazy. It's totally crazy. So what has sort of been happening in this group, in this forum? Well, there's been a lot of work on figuring out if we can take ChatGPT and these systems and make them behave like true experts, like, a physicist, an electrical engineer, top VC, all of these things. Now you might say, oh, okay, ChatGPT already does that, but I will disagree with you. It actually doesn't behave like an expert. But the question is, can we make it like an expert? So you can actually do what we all sort of expect AI will do in the future. It's like, we're going to use it to innovate, invent new things, change the future, and so on. So a lot of work has been on different prompt families and stuff. So I've been working on a lot of things, different prompts here. They're all available on the Innovation Algebra website. It started with Innovation Algebra 2.7, which a lot of people are using a lot. Then we did brainstorming, alpha prompt for scientific investigation, and created a whole slew of them. The latest is actually a new one called motivational entity that I just released yesterday. So I've been doing all this work, trying to experiment with all sorts of different ways to make the AI behave like an expert. And I've been also experimenting with what I call exotics. So these are prompts that are just really very different from other prompts. I put a star next to the ones that are sort of lying around in the lab. Now you can see already, just in my little world, I've created a whole bunch of stuff. It's sort of been amazing months. The more you do it, the more stuff you invent. And it's sort of hard just to get it out there, right? You just sit down in the morning and you think, oh, this is interesting, somebody could use it, but what am I going to do with it, right? The sort of embarrassment of riches. Just give you an idea what I'm doing. Currently I'm working on something called Construct, which is a very sophisticated prompt with actually no knowledge in it. It's all metacognition routines and stuff like this. It's actually quite amazing, but it's a whole story, just that. Now, other person in the group is Wei Larry Liu. He's done a whole slew of prompts which a lot of people use too, which is based on this IA 2.7. So he has storyteller, teacher, economist, data analyst, and fact checker. These are incredibly sophisticated and just incredible prompts. Larry has actually found a way to create prompts from prompts. It's called meta prompting. So you use the prompts to generate new prompts. And I know that he's generated about 50 personas or so, or archetypes. Can do all sorts of crazy stuff, including things that you normally wouldn't expect, like fact checking and stuff like this. So this is sort of all the stuff that's been happening here. I know a lot of people in this community have created their own prompts and so on. But what has happened is that a lot of different prompting techniques have been figured out. And the world doesn't really know about any of this. I'm trying to teach it. I'm actually have a master class in 2 weeks. There's general techniques like scaffolding, self-prompting. We use a particular notation called bracket notation, scoring and evaluation mechanisms, planners and standard operating procedures, new things like adaptive taste algorithms, self-specialization, and meta prompting. So you probably have never heard of these things, but if you're developing prompts yourself, you're just like, hey, there are all these tools that I can use to do it. And there's I've been working the sub-branch of just ideation. How do you create new ideas that are beyond the knowledge frontier? Things like idea score reversal. Okay, so it doesn't mean anything to you at the moment, but these are ways, very simple ways that you can generate crazy ideas, or novelty-based ideation. Things like hardness factor, beyond the knowledge frontier, technology and validation readiness levels, conceptual bridge, rapid ideation. These are all stuff that you could just throw at the problem. Each of them are relatively easy to understand. And then there are all sorts of other things, like how do you capture expertise? Like we've had meetups on this about thinking frameworks, how to use thinking frameworks, how to generate new frameworks, for example, based on TRIZ principles and so on. And a lot of people are actually generating new prompts and frameworks using alpha prompt. So this is meta prompting. We are using AI to speed up our work. I actually often don't write prompts by hand anymore. It's just not effective. It's much easier to use an existing high power prompt to generate the next generation of prompt. And I can just ask prompts to improve themselves. And so that's why my work in the last few months has been accelerating. It's crazy. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I have this a very different perspective on innovation in the sense that I can see what AI can do, right? Because I'm experimenting in all this crazy stuff. Then there's knowledge capsules. Last meetup was a lot on, how do you use knowledge capsules? For example, if you want to use AI as your co-founder, the personal knowledge capsules. You can also use generic ways. Some new ways have been invented to speak to the computer. Experts speak, AI speak, ideas speak, commerce speak, skeptical speak, and so on. These are actually techniques that are sort of based on the Sapir-Whorf theory about how language shapes our thinking. And funny enough, it works on ChatGPT too. So you can use expert speak and AI speak very simply to create incredibly sophisticated personas really quickly if you know how to do it. And then there are all sorts of new experiments in thinking modes. I use animal analogies to explain them: squirrel mode, falcon mode, dolphin mode. These are different ways of thinking. For example, imagine a squirrel runs around, gets nuts, right? It's sort of like a basic research. Falcon is get an overview, flying around, seeing what's going, and then going in for the kill, right? So, and then there are people that have been doing agent frameworks. So Sai gave a talk a few months back actually, on taking Dr. Innovation, the brainstorming prompt, and turning it into an agent framework. I've also done some stuff here. So anyway, so basically there's this huge unknown map of stuff happening. And, I've been talking to a lot of people that are doing things, interesting things. For example, I just had a really interesting meeting yesterday with Daniel from Australia, who's doing all sorts of really interesting things in dynamic scaffolding, I would call it. It's like, how do you create prompts out of new prompts? Anyway, so that is my little spiel to sort of set the stage. I'm just going to stop my share here. And now the conversation really can start. So
in some way, all these mentions there, do you have a reference, or are you going to build some kind of knowledge base or something? That is the value of this mind map is very big, and I guess a lot of us has some things to be added there, or some people has been reading or learning about all this stuff. So other topics are completely new for some of us too. That sounds like a good use of that. I don't know what is in your mind.
Yeah, so it's sort of a problem is that the world is moving sort of so fast for some of us that you literally sit down in the morning in front of the computer, and then by afternoon you invented something new, right? Now, not everyone has that experience, and nobody is, it's sort of you're just generating faster than you can publish, right? And it's sort of a very weak definition of publish, right? It's probably not something that you can publish as a paper, but it still would be interesting for somebody. And so the question is how to get the ideas out there so people actually can use them. So I don't know what the answer is. I've been putting together this Beyond Masterclass, which tries and talks and covers with these things, with slides and stuff explaining how it fits together, the stuff that I figured out, maybe some things that I've picked up from Larry and so on, and just try and share it. So I think that's one thing. And another thing is just case studies, right? You can read through chat logs and stuff like this, publishing them, right? I think that's probably the easiest way to, but still, it's just a lot of stuff. If you're not a big reader, it's sort of overwhelming, this flood of stuff. It's sort of, the AIs are generating information so fast, right? So we probably need tools to filter it down, right? To the essence and so on. So, hey, Vidal, question.
Yeah, hey, Hannes. Thanks. I mean, I just throw out a couple questions. I know since it's kind of open discussion. I really love the stuff you're doing. I've been playing with it. One one other thing I'll just ask you, so part of the theory seems to be these prompts are very large, right? Like if you give it a much more detailed, longer prompt, then you get better results, which, you know, I guess makes sense. But if you're trying to like put this, like say I wanted to provide like this expert to people to talk to, right? If you want to make this like productize it, one of the challenges, right, is the longer the prompt is and the conversation, the slower GPT-4 is, and the more it costs because it costs per token. So do you have any thoughts on kind of the trade-offs of, you know, how you productize this? You know, if you make like super, like, you know, I'm going to have this expert in this topic, but the prompt is massive, you know, to generate that.
Yeah. Some of the prompts now like reach 20 kilobytes in size. It's
Yeah,
just crazy. It's like, my OpenAI costs have just like skyrocketed to some degree, right? It's sort of crazy. So there are different things that are happening. Daniel, you might have gone to bed already. He's in Australia.
No. I'm still awake.
Oh, you are here, Daniel. Great. I
Yeah.
was showing me yesterday something cool that you were doing on these really
Yeah,
long.
do you want me to share screen? Because I'm playing around in the background and it might be of interest to you guys, but see, I'm actually at the other end where a little bit like Vidal. What I'm doing is that I'm dumbing it down and I'm looking for, because the thing is that the talk that we had last night, Haynes got me into a conversation and I was supposed to be in bed, of course. But you know, how do we present? Because we're in this room now and we've got a lot of really, really smart people. And we all kind of got to know what we're doing. And then when we go out and we talk to people out in the real world, you know, and they kind of look at us and go, what are you talking about? You know, and then even today, I showed them a bit of the idea about what I'm doing. And I'll do a quick screen share and I'll show you what I'm playing with as I'm listening to you guys. And this is that case of grabbing something and dumbing it down so then it can be a usable product. So is that okay, Haynes? Go
ahead. This is a roundtable, so you know, love to see what you're doing.
Yeah, so it's let's just get the right screen. All right. So basically, what I'm trying to do here, and I'll go from the start, I'm breaking down everything that we've just been talking about, the different personas and different mindsets and growth sets, and you know, sort of the you know, all sorts of different things. And so I'm using Notion at the moment. So if I go back to the start, basically what I want to do is I want to create something that a tutor can come in, they can hit a button, and then they're going to end up with a database of material that they can then go off and build lectures to. I'll throw you guys over there. So off we go, and then so I've just sort of breaking these you know, these prompts down a little bit. So in the sense is that if I'm looking to throw in, say at the moment I'm just, you know, throwing in project scope, you know, throwing project management, I'm giving it a quick topic, and so thinking about this, so this is Notion, and Notion's base is actually using Claude. And then I go through, and so I'm keeping it so that it's up to them to take it to the depth that they want, and they don't have to think too much about it. So, and then we end up getting an output is what we want. That's the whole, you know, sort of scenario that we're looking for. And so going back to a cost, if they've got, you know, Notion AI, or they could actually build in here and then take it out to somewhere else. Let's pull up a persona. Off we go. We're sort of, you know, starting to build out that little picture fairly quickly. Let's just throw in that there. All right. And then all we're doing is then pulling up a template, and that's then going to step them through what they would generate, and that's going to pull everything on the page and see. And so basically, if I'm setting up and I want to pull a lesson together, it should take no more than 5 minutes to produce something that is going to be useful. And this is very usable because it's going to step them through. It's going to expand. They can expand and go off, much like in GPT, but there's no copy and paste, and it's going into a database straight away. And then the beauty of this as well is that because Notion's got this lovely little thing where you can actually, I can expand and that make it longer. So I can start building out notes and things like that as well. Of course, I have to validate everything that I'm going to put in. Okay. And so you can see what I'm doing here. Do you guys get the idea? Is that, you know?
Yeah, you're sort of building the prompt on the fly.
Yeah. So
And actually,
scaffolding.
you're building the scaffold, right? You're putting knowledge capsules together and so on. And actually, Daniel, you inspired me to actually work on a new prompt. So construct was actually a new one.
Yeah.
Construct
Beautiful.
starts out blank. And you say something like, hey, I want to work on my favorite example, the underwater habitat, right? And then it
Yeah.
decides what personas and what techniques and skills and all that stuff. And it sort of generates the prompt. And it says, hey, you know, I'm going to do this and this and this together. So the initial prompt is sort of small, but then it generates a bigger part. And then it goes through a conversation with you to try and figure out, is this what you want? And then you start working on the problem. It's sort of the specialization stuff that Larry also does with these prompts, just so that other people know. A lot of Larry's prompts are sort of universal prompts. They're like a universal teacher, but you can type in something and then it becomes a specialized teacher. So I've been sort of also experimenting with this same stuff. Like, how do you start with not everything, like a 20 kilobyte prompt, but you start with sort of a kernel, like the reason why it's a construct, it's like it's like from the Matrix movie, where they go into the Matrix, right? They load into the construct and they configure what they're going to be, right? What skills they want. So you're doing the same thing, right? So
that's the key. That sort of satisfies, when you talk about, if you go and turn this into a bot, which, other people are doing, that's going to keep that cost down as well. Because no matter what, it has to, to be a viable product, what are people willing to pay for it, and what's the use case apart from within, say, an academic side of things. So yeah, it's all pretty interesting. I mean, I'm just trying to solve a problem I know myself from, people that do have to actually present lectures and stuff, that they give away a lot of free time creating materials. So if they can have something like this where it's, when you're doing your research, you've got your funnel and you're bringing your funnel down fairly quickly. So when you're sitting in front of the TV having a glass of wine, you're doing your validation, and then all of a sudden you can go off and then pull out what you want. So
very cool. I noticed, is that you, Kyle? I think. Yeah. You raised your hand.
I just wanted to touch on the expert topic, because these long, sophisticated prompts that take up a lot of the context window to start, they might outline the contours of what an expert looks like, but the output is not going to voluntarily arrive at an expert output, as what I've discovered. And how I've been trying to get around that, what I find in my work is that it'll get close to the expert technical response, but it's not there. I know it's not right. I prompt it further and add additional context. Then it can arrive at that expert output. So using the code interpreter, well, it's not called code interpreter any longer, but I've created just simply context. I put it into a Word document, all the context that I need for the scenario. Then starting with the right persona, because the persona, as it's been researched now, a good expert persona is going to get you deeper results instead of broad general results. So with the persona, then I load in the context, and not typing it out, just load it into the code interpreter, upload it. And now it's got expert persona. It has the context for the most part that it needs. And I get a lot closer to those expert outputs that I'm looking for. But still at this stage, I'm finding if you don't have domain expertise, it's really hard to get. Like, I wouldn't be able to enter the engineering world and try and produce expert outputs any more than anyone could enter my domain and get expert outputs, because you need additional context. And so while it's very, very broad, just general, very broad accessibility to enter into new domains, I see this is still pretty, you need some expertise yourself, and you also need to put in context.
Yeah, you need taste, right? Like taste is, yeah, maybe don't go there, but go here, right? Like experts have taste, right? They behave in a certain way, right? There's a certain intuition, right? I think that intuition is just very hard for the AI to compete with, right? You are always, it's sort of like this thing gave me superpowers to go in directions that I've never been able to, but it still goes off in weird areas. It's like the squirrel, it just runs crazy, right? And you want to move it. I still find it incredibly valuable. And I am tempted to dabble in areas that I don't know. Probably not a good idea. So, yeah.
Well, as long as you're not building bridges, literal bridges.
Right. So
I just had one other separate comment too about spreading the word. Those case studies are useful for scalability, but I think what you need are the, like those of us who are here to be kind of ambassadors as well. I really struggle with explaining the capability of what AI can do, these LLMs can actually do. Case studies help supplement that, but it's the people that are talking to other people and showcasing it. So while we're learning to use your innovation algebra and as well as so many other of these prompts, as our skill set and capability grows, I think that's going to naturally expand out and spread the word.
yeah, I had some very interesting conversations with some friends. Actually, I see Andrew is here. Andrew? Andrew? You want to say hello?
Hey, Hannes.
Hey, Andrew is an old friend of mine, professional trainer, and can talk a lot about challenges, I would say, the average person faces in corporate America, right? So. Andrew?
I'm actually in a noisy environment right now, which is why I'm staying muted, but I could maybe pitch in a little later.
Okay. So Andrew and I have been talking about sort of the blank prompt phenomena. It's like, hey, you have this thing, you can ask it anything you want, right? I mean, if somebody quoted me and say, Hannes, come up with 5 ideas quickly, what to ask, I would probably say, I don't know either, right? So, and so one choice could be just to have more use cases, right? So saying, hey, here's a menu of stuff you could do, let's focus on this use case. You are I don't know, HR director or something. You would want to create a job description or something or other. So so having something more use case centric instead of just having a blank screen, and also having examples, right? Like, what can you ask the machine, right? So we've had some really interesting conversations with CB Anand. I don't know if CB is around on this topic. Let me see. I think he's on a conference or something where his challenge is, listen, there are some people in the organization that just totally get it and they start innovating. They sort of like the friend of ChatGPT. They are very much tuned to speaking to it and sort of understanding it and trying to explain. And others that are just not there, it's not something that they do. It could also just be, a lot of people are not fantastic readers, right? For example, the average reading level in the US is not that high, right? So it's just overwhelming, all this output, right? So there are some natural barriers there, right?
But one thing that comes to my mind is I remember that there was a hype last year about graph neural networks and how they could aggregate knowledge. Maybe not last year, maybe 2 years back, but there was definitely one of the ideas to use graph neural networks is to aggregate knowledge, and this is a great place. And as it turned out, LLMs have taken it. But nevertheless, what I'm still thinking about, whether whole knowledge can be given as language. Because, for example, when I think about some craftsmanship, like I know a smith or something, you still need to do it by with your hands. I know that there are robots coming to us and take also this part. But when we are talking about experts, it's in the digital world. Well, everything is text, right? Everything, all of the browser in the end is some HTML files with some other things on top. But in the real world, it's not that simple, because we also need this skills and so for example, one idea would be how to teach people how to do public speaking with creating such experts. Is that even possible, or how, or I know so something like that happens in the real world instead of digital world? Because there we all agree that there's a huge amount for innovation, and on the other hand, everything is text, but in the real world, not everything is text.
So it's very interesting. So when you learned physics and mathematics, Jan, you probably were not very good at it until you got somebody that worked with you, like somebody looked over your shoulder and gave you a certain intuition why I don't know, quantum gravity works in a particular way, right? It's sort of like you have to.
Nobody knows how quantum gravity works.
Yeah, well, so it's sort of like even harder. It's like that topic is like, okay, it's sort of, it's sort of, let's just start with basic mathematics, right? It's sort of this notion of intus, that you have an intuition that you get from like a master apprenticeship type relationship. The only reason why I really know anything about it is that a friend of mine, Giordano Beretta, extremely experienced innovator and mathematician, explained to me how skills are transferred, right? And there's a lot of just stuff that's not written down. It's like implicit knowledge, like you don't really understand until you've done it. Like it's like statistics, when you learn statistics the first time, they say, don't worry how it works, this formula. It will take you maybe 5 years and then it suddenly will click, right? That's what they told me. I thought, you must be nuts. But, it's like that. It's like this, you learn and then suddenly it just all fits together. And that intus, that implicit knowledge is not very explicit today, right? There are people, fortunately, that take implicit knowledge and convert it into explicit knowledge. For example, TRIZ is a good example, where this Russian group took the principles, how to design patterns and so on, and actually wrote them down. And now you can use those principles. And funny enough, ChatGPT knows how to take TRIZ and apply it to a different area. For example, I've done that. Taken TRIZ principles, which is basically for product design, use it for negotiation or pricing of products and stuff. It actually works. So this notion of turning something implicit into explicit can be reused and sort of remixed across fields, but there's still a lot of stuff lost in translation. We don't really know what is the implicit knowledge, what's the tacit knowledge behind it, and how to get into it. And to some degree, I think also talking to ChatGPT is like that too, is you sort of get a feeling for it, what it can do. My expectations of what ChatGPT can do is just much higher than other people, because I ask it incredibly hard questions and it always gives me an answer. It's the weirdest thing, right? It's crazy.
Whether the answer is true or false, it's completely different question. But you mentioned like the transfer of knowledge, that the knowledge gets lost in transfer. And actually, well, I've been into this situation for the last 2 weeks that basically we do some project and it involves both design team, the engineers and the other people. And the problem is that basically none of the knowledge is written down. Well, obviously we do documentation, we write as much as we should, but nevertheless, like to get a little, just a rough insight what the project is about, what we are supposed to do. I could say it in one sentence. Well, it's confidential, so I cannot. But in any case, so the summary of the project is just one sentence. But to get this knowledge, what the project is about, I need like to talk, I don't know, to 20 people, and it took me 2 weeks. So here's like $1 billion idea how to get this knowledge from workers in companies and try to aggregate it together, because knowledge is siloed on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's like there's people who had this knowledge like 10 years ago and now they are gone, that they went somewhere else. So it's really important to have this traceability of knowledge, and I guess it would be very useful for other people as well. Yeah.
What I was wondering is, if you take a large organization, you just take all the conversations that they have today with ChatGPT and organize it, right? You might, and the questions they ask, you might be able to extract something from an organization. I don't know. But I would be curious to know how many of those questions are actually relevant, right? Maybe people don't think like that. It's like, I don't know if I'm one of the few people that just think like, listen, why this thing is there. It's sort of like, if I ask this question to a human, the human would tell me, go away, Hannes, that's just too crazy. Why do you even ask me this? That's just nuts. We ask it. And I ask it and it does some attempt at it. Often it's actually pretty good and I have insights that I've never had before, but I just started asking it incredibly hard questions, right? Like really crazy questions. Like just wake up one day and think of the craziest thing you can ask it and just see what happens. It's sort of like amazing. And once you sort of get past that, like, listen, I don't need to have all the ideas, right? I can just ask this thing and it will come up with something. And so I don't know if I'm wasting my time the whole day asking crazy questions, but it's sort of super fascinating. I'm actually wondering if other people started asking really nutty questions. Like I ask it to, I've invented personas to literally that are cosmic entities that, and I've been using it to, I ask it like, okay, prepare a plan to destroy our sun, and just see what it would do. And it's amazing. I mean, it comes up with something, but it also starts talking about ethics, like, okay, maybe this is not a good idea. And then I ask it, well, can you simulate it in a fake universe? So it invents a new universe and then destroys the sun there. It gives me a report about what it did. I mean, it's like nuts. I mean, I cannot even imagine it. This is a morning exercise here in the labs. So I'm wondering if other folks are doing nutty things like that too.
I haven't tried that, but Hannes, one thing I tried after your last talk was I would just tell it like, you know, you're this persona and you're from 2028 or something, right? And just tell me about the future and how we got there. And it'll just invent a future, right? And it'll try to explain, you know, how you got there, which is, you know, very interesting, you know? So I found that technique interesting, to speculate on the future.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is you can ask it to say, go beyond the knowledge frontier to fast forward someday 2 million years from now, right? Something like this. And it will come up with something.
Yeah.
And then you can say, okay, well, that's nutty idea, it's useless and so on. But I discovered if you give it parameters, interesting two parameters are something called TRL and VRL. It's technology readiness level and validation readiness level. These are sort of established frameworks to evaluate technologies, how suitable they are for commercial use or application. And so you can actually, it knows that ChatGPT perfectly knows it. So you just say, create ideas for me that are high in TRL and VRL scores, and you actually get ideas that are useful, right? You can actually do it. It's just a matter of reining it in a little bit, right? And so a lot of the ideation stuff is actually reverse than you normally would think. Instead of just saying, let's create 100 crazy ideas, you first spend time defining a scoring mechanism, what you consider a good idea or a bad idea. Now, to do that, you can actually just use existing scoring mechanisms. Some of them are in IA 2.7, but you can also invent new ones. I've invented a lot of stuff based on Margaret Bowden's work on creativity measurements and novelty measurements. So I take her work, then I extend it quickly. I can literally just ask it, come up with new ways to measure to novelty. I tweak that a little bit. Now I have a way to measure an idea. And now I tell it, generate ideas in this range of novelty, right? Like extreme on all axes, or just these parameters should be high. So I take with measurement and I go back to the ideas, right? So for example, I have a script, I have prompts that measure hardness. So it's a prompt I developed using Alpha Prompt to determine if an idea is hard or not. It's actually quite a complicated mathematical calculation how to do it. It uses geometric mean and all sorts of stuff of really fuzzy parameters that even a human wouldn't be able to know, like interconnectedness, how many parts are in this problem and so on. But it can come up with a number, the H factor, how hard this thing is, on a range from 0 to 100, 10 or something. And then I can ask it, generate 100 ideas from easy to hard. And it actually does it, right? Or I can just say, give me ideas with a hardness level above 10 with a VRL and TRL in this range. It's sort of like a constraint solution thing. You can actually, by setting up all sorts of numeric constraints and so on, you can actually generate ideas that actually match, that are feasible, and just bump out the knowledge frontier a little bit.
I think that's really great, because the thing is, to your point, it can generate shitload of ideas, and then it's
Right.
like, how do you evaluate what the good ones are? And some of them look good, but I don't know. That's going to be a challenge. So that's interesting. I'd love to see more how you do that.
Yeah, funny thing, it can do it. So I've also experimented with doing like a logic beyond the knowledge frontier, reasoning beyond the knowledge frontier. It uses analogies and counterfactuals and all sorts of stuff. Of course, it's way too complicated for me to actually think of all these prompts. It was actually designed by Alpha Prompt. And if you go into the Beyond channel on the Discord, there is something called Universal Archetype that has some of that stuff in there. If you open up the prompt, you will see these weird things. And it actually comes up with really cool ideas. And also sort of reasoning steps, right? Why it came up with those ideas. And it uses interesting analogies between different fields. It would use things like biomimicry and all sorts of stuff. And so ideas don't always need to be crazy. If you just put the right parameters around it, it's incredibly useful. So. Anyways, So, I'm curious if we should switch the mode of the conversation a little bit to what people are working on and where they need help. And maybe I want to maybe call out Adi. I see Adi is here. Welcome back, Adi. It's great to see you. I can't tell you how many people gave positive feedback on your talk from 2 weeks back. It's crazy.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. It felt epic, and I'm happy to be back again. I saw your flowchart. I'm so excited to see what's coming.
So I'm curious, you know, you are trying to take these things and apply it to education. And I know one of your goals is to have like 3,000 teachers or students. I'm not sure, groups, I guess, classes to use it. How, you know, how far have you guys come along, you know, and are there other insights that you've gained since we last spoke?
Yep. So we've the 3,000 teachers that we were planning for is for the state of Telangana, which will be going through shortly. And I think we'll have a small boot camp for the teachers, a 6 to 7 day boot camp sometime in December. So it'll be like the first time the teachers are going for like a sort of a summer camp or a winter camp after a very, very long time. So this is one step for Telangana. And we've also roped in some Tibetan schools to try this experiment. So that's something that we're doing. And also, like, while we were figuring these things out, we spoke to a lot of bureaucrats and also understood their way of processing. So now there's one thing that I was very interested in doing is, can we create a prompt to help them function? Because these are the guys that are solving large scale problems for the society, trying to build insights, running operations, creating new policy. So what if we made a co-pilot like this? We were thinking of creating a co-pilot for teachers. Now we also have like an additional idea of what if we created a co-pilot for bureaucrats who are specifically designing policy for marginalized community. So that's where we're currently at.
I might be able to help you there. A lot of my work has been more like tech innovation type stuff, but I'm cognizant of the fact that a lot of the world's problems are actually in policy and policy generation, and it's such an incredibly slow process to create policies and regulations and all these things. I actually did a little bit of research into it. You know, in the US, it could take literally thousands of people to get some new policies through Congress. And it's like a multi-year effort. And so anything to speed that up would make, or just cut down the number of people you need, would be incredibly valuable. So there is a version of IA 2.7. It's actually called IA 4.0. Don't ask me why it jumped so far. That has a lot of stuff for policy development in it that I developed. So it comes up with really interesting policy type stuff, right? So I'm not a policy wonk, so I can't judge how good it is. It just exists. And I'm happy to share it with you. But I agree, it is a big problem. It's like, you know, how do you, just the act of creating a policy for the simplest thing needs so input from so many people that it's just nuts, right? It just sort of spirals out of control immediately, right? So, and I think that's why a lot of cities and local governments are just sort of paralyzed, right? So let's say they want to do something, they want to work on light pollution or something like that. It just doesn't come high on the radar because it's such a lot of work, right? They need people to actually do it, right? And so it never gets addressed. Maybe with AI, smaller groups can actually do policies and so on. So, and actually run simulations, right? Have different opinions here, but I've actually, the policy frameworks that I've been experimenting with actually do simulate different stakeholders and their opinions and so on. It's sort of very interesting to read that, right? It might shortcut a lot in the policy generation. So.
Yeah. So when we started, like the reason why this popped up in the first place was we were trying to identify what these guys do on a daily basis and like what are the challenges they're facing. Actually, what their job role is, what are they expected to do for the public. And then we figured, like, as we further went into the organization's ecosystem, we figured that these guys aren't really connected to the field in terms of like the field reality and, because a lot of them are not really data centric. And since we have a different bureaucratic system here, every 2 years, they might even change their field completely, right? Today, you might be a secretary for education. 2 years later, after your term is done, you might be a secretary for mining. So these are the folks that need to be extremely entrepreneurial and reliant on data and run their departments like their companies themselves. But like before we got there and before we got into, to the school of thought of how policy needs to be designed, we figured that they're actually 2 steps behind when it comes to collecting actual data from the field. So what we're planning to do now is just like tell ChatGPT that this is the job role of this person. This is the department. This is what it's expected to do for the public. This is the budget they have. And based on all the past reports that they've published and media reports or whatever information is available, we put this out there and teach ChatGPT and just create like a basic overview of where this person needs to start if he has to build a more data-oriented team or a data-oriented department. And once actual true data comes in, we can start actually figuring out patterns and seeing where, the most of these requirements lie for government funding, be it infrastructure, service, manpower, whatever it is. So we figured that, like, firstly, they don't have data that's accurate. So that's where we are at currently. And we kind of need help figuring out how do we help them collect actual data from field and what parameters should we be considering in the first place.
I mean, you can totally imagine ChatGPT coming up with straw man polls and forums and stuff to fill out to collect the right data, right?
Yep.
That's sort of just like, okay, what should you collect, right? What should you ask, right? So
yeah. So waiting, I'd also love to use the policy one you're talking about and also tell it additionally that this guy or this woman is currently aged this, their entire experience that they've had so far, all their achievements, their skill sets and all, and blend both of them to actually see how we can use that bureaucrat strength to run the department. Because these guys are also sometimes hesitant to learn something because of the learning curve that comes with it. And if they're placed in another department altogether, then they kind of like, it's no point. So they're kind of discouraged and learning is not really, rewarded, I'd say, or recognized. So that's something that we wanted to like get started with.
Hey, Jorge.
Yeah, I try to the explanation that Adit has been giving is very interesting, but I don't know how much within a session or how that works. You keep a history of the profile of the people, or how you keep the context in between sessions or things like that. Because the point that when you say this guy is a minister of something and then is a minister of something else, how that is a way to keep that that knowledge or that profiling in a way that I can keep asking with the same profile. That's any way to do it, because as far as I understood, all these prompts is every time that you start a session with the prompt, you create some kind of the context or surrounded of the elements. But after you generate the set of questions, you are shaping the answers into some way. But how much that is keep that permanent, or how do you manage that kind of things?
Yeah. So for me, so far, what's worked is last time we discussed about knowledge capsules, right? So we're kind of updating the knowledge capsule every time we ask something new, and additionally creating a case study that also consistently keeps improving or putting up data that's like live, kind of helps in terms of coming up with the right solution. And of course, like the first one is never the right one. So you keep iterating in different ways, use different prompts, give it different scenarios, different schools of thought, and that's actually giving us a scope for experimentation. I wouldn't say it's bang on 100% doing great already, but actually it's a huge leap from what they're already doing.
And in that sense, is when you keep it that there is any limitations in the saturation ChatGPT, the number of tokens or things like that, you reach a limit that you cannot keep going, or you keep, or the old things are throw away and the new ones are coming in. What is the behavior there?
So we try and keep it under 25 prompts so that we don't cross the limit as of now.
25 prompts is the
Yeah,
limit?
we're using GPT-4 at the moment. So we are using this as a tool for ourselves. So it gives you like 25 prompts for every 3 hours, right? And that's, we're kind of wrapping it up in that much.
Yeah, so what, I mean, I'm also trying to capture more knowledge capsules about innovation algebra, like different talks that have been given, different presentations, you know, different ideas, prompts and stuff like this, to sort of just create a record, because I need that record now to do my work, right? I need to capture, I need to capture essentially everything that happens around me, and then I need to somehow compress it, right? So that it can actually be used inside inside ChatGPT. And so one thing that I found, and I have very limited experience with it, is that I can use expert speak to summarize things for me. So the ideas with expert speak is just that, you know, how an expert would talk to each other. So you can take something long and convert it into expert speak, and it sort of tosses away all the unimportant things, and it's a form of summarization. It's not how normally humans would speak because it's very compact and dense, but it can reduce the tokens dramatically. And in general, my finding is the compressed thing can be decompressed into something bigger again. So theoretically, you know, I can take, I mean, we would need to develop tools to do that. You toss things in and then it gets compressed, right? And then hopefully in future, the prompts would be advanced enough to actually pick the right stuff to actually solve your problems, right? So, but yeah, it's a big problem, is that, you know, how do you first of all collect all the things that you need, right? You sort of have to be very religious about storing everything and thinking that, hey, I might need this, and then you somehow need to bring it into the context. So I don't think anyone works like that at the moment. But what I'm noticing is like a lot of my interactions are now inside ChatGPT, and I want to have a way to export the whole thing and organize it and reorganize it and search it. So I don't know if anyone has seen a tool like that, but I think it would be incredibly useful. Sort of turn everything that I have there into a big database, just export the whole thing, right? And then maybe process and compress it and so on.
So it really relates to the way I think about the AI, because I mentioned it, I guess, last time and maybe the day before. It's like, for me, AI, not AI, but neural networks is a way to compress the knowledge, because actually the way we talk is very not dense, in a sense. In this sentence, what I'm saying, if you think about it, there's zero information in the plus 3 or 4 sentences. So, and neural networks can do that. So one of the things I've been thinking about, it's nothing maybe new or maybe, but it's just interesting for me, is because there will be more and more knowledge and more storage required for all of this for all of the data in general. So when you mentioned the databases, I was wondering about some ideas like neural network database where it will indeed compress. Because, for example, I know if you have 100 images of a cat, then you don't need 100 images of a cat, right? You need something much less. So maybe, I don't know, I haven't explored that idea, but it just what came to my mind when you mentioned the databases. Maybe there is some possibility so normally in this discriminative AI, you try to label things. So you have like a picture of a cat, and you try to label it. It's a cat, it's a dog, it's I don't know, a tree, right? But here it would be the other way around, to try to reconstruct the picture of a cat from this compressed version, and this is indeed what this autoencoders
autoencoders
are trying to achieve. But I'm just wondering whether, because right now we stop at the autoencoders. Autoencoder is something like, we have a picture, we try to put it in the lower and lower dimensions, and then we try to reconstruct it. But I was wondering whether somebody is thinking about like a big picture out of it, like a big building, like a AI powered databases.
So actually what I thought, and I think what happens is that I have a lot of crazy ideas in my mind. I compress it into really high level concepts, and I speak it, and you decompress it, and you fill in the blanks, right? I can use very, very high level language. I don't need to give you all the details. And I think a lot of the summarization technology could just drop a lot of the details. It can be sort of reconstructed. It can be much, much more compressed, right? You really just need the essence, right? You don't need, for example, let's say you have TRIZ analysis or something. The word TRIZ is enough to explain what it means, and the AI can do it. And so the question is, okay, what can be deleted and what can be kept of your whole history, right? And then you can compress your knowledge capsules incredibly, right? I've actually tried it. I've written prompts to try and do this compression of stuff I'm working on. And the compression factors are like factor 10 or more, right? It comes out really, really dense stuff. If you convince the AI, it's like, listen, it's not for human consumption, it's for AI consumption, it actually does a pretty good job. So I did a whole bunch of experiments on it. I haven't released any of it, but I was thinking of building it in some of my tools to actually get over the context window issue, right? So
but that's in the point that you say, okay, you are publishing a lot of the information, all the prompts, but how you describe it here is, if you have a sequence of prompts has a different behavior. And I don't know, first of all, if I take for instance 3 sequence of prompts, and then I do it in a different sequence, or I repeat the same one in a brand new environment, do I get the same results, or is going to get a complete different results?
Yeah. No, actually, I've done some experiments. So I take a very complicated prompt, maybe 10 kilobytes in size, and then I just take all the lines of the prompt and I scramble them. I have a shuffler that shuffle it, and then I use that for ChatGPT again, and it behaves in exactly the same way. We're not talking about humans here that are sensitive to order of stuff. It can take a shredded prompt and randomly reorganize and reconstruct it very easily. So theoretically, what you can do, you can just take 6 prompts, sample data from each of them, blend it together in a new prompt, and it probably would still work. as long as the sampling is not too aggressive, right? Let's say you throw 25% of it away, it likely would still work. The rest it would still be able to reconstruct, which is also a way to becoming over the context window size. You just take all your history, you just sample it, toss it all together in a basket, give it to the prompt, ask a question, and then do it again, right? For a different sample, right? So you do it like sample 5 times, ask 5 times questions, and then have something that pick the best of the 5 questions, right? You can totally imagine building such a thing. It sounds very crazy to toss information away, but because it can reconstruct a lot, it will likely work. I mean, I've not done the experiments, I've just done the shuffling experiment, but who knows, it might just work, right? Just instead of trying to be clever, just sample stuff, right? Random sampling often is a very easy way to get around these tough problems, because the problem is like, what is important, right? You have this huge bunch of stuff and you have to figure out what is important, and you need to have some decision mechanism that's going to figure out what's important and what's going to keep and delete. But it probably is going to make mistakes, right? Anyways, right? It's not perfect, just like humans. Humans can still function without remembering everything. So clearly we've forgotten a lot of stuff, but we can still do stuff. So theoretically, you could just sample from all your historical knowledge to bring it back to a smaller context window and just try it several times, right? So I don't know, that seems it's a very techie conversation, but I would imagine it could work. So
sorry guys, I just have to go, and see you in 2 weeks time. Yeah, I guess.
Hey Jan, thank you so much. It's always fun having you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation.
It's a very nice seminar, or I don't know, workshop, or whatever you call it. Well, it's like you can talk to people who have some interesting views on things, and it's not like you have to listen, or you just talk, because this is what usually happens, is that either nobody wants to talk or everybody wants to talk, or you just or you have to talk because nobody else wants to talk.
Yeah, the whole philosopher's corner concept we worked out last year is a really fantastic forum for intellectuals to the way we communicate, and it's very addictive to go to a place, and there are people that you can actually exchange deep ideas with, because unfortunately a lot of conversations in our world is not that deep, right? And it's this problem that you need to find your intellectual soulmates, right? Everyone wants to find them. It's just incredibly hard, and so you sort of have to create these special places where you can actually do these things. Anyway,
Yeah.
It's hard, right? I mean, you especially, there are a lot of quantum physicists floating around, so, but at least here you have a different perspective, right, from people with other experiences. So
Yeah, I remember, well, that was the biggest issue of doing PhD in Poland. Not that I didn't have money. I had actually more than I would have in the US in terms of funding. Not that I didn't have interesting projects. I did have. Not that I didn't have a nice supervisor working with top people. I did have, but I didn't have nobody to talk about some deep ideas, because they were either wanted to talk about technicalities. Oh, here is this integral. How do we calculate it? Well, who cares? I mean, we will do it eventually, but why to spend the night talking about this? Or they just don't want to talk about like big ideas. So that was problem here. That's for sure.
it's very common. Yeah.
Because people are scared, like, to try to, I know, to be bold in thinking, right? And And it's one thing is to give your opinion, like a scientific one, or I know, like a professional one. That's one thing. And here you have to be very strict, right? You have to tell them what are the facts and what are not facts. Actually, one of the worst things about the Hawking books that are popular is that he doesn't distinguish his own ideas from the facts. And this is why many people think that, well, many of his theories were established where they were not. But in any case, what I was sorry, it's late in the night here. It's like 8 p.m. So yeah, but that's professional side. And the other thing is like you have to be bold in this thinking cap, right? So it's like there's this professional cap that you put, and then you put your thinking cap, and these are like two different things that can collaborate with one another, but these are like you have to act differently. And this is a nice forum to put on this thinking cap.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
I would love to have you again. So actually, I also noticed we have two other people here who I don't know, Tracy and Nasli. You've managed to stay a long time, so we want to know what you think too. Hey,
I have to now to do some laser things and to
see you soon.
Put my resting cap on.
Yeah,
See you.
yeah.
Bye.
Cool.
I know. But Nasli has been posting a lot of things about community college and things like that. And I don't know, it's from the point of view of all this stuff, I am trying to think into, I don't know, different ways of seeing, learning how to do prompting and what you get. In some sense, I try to feel about the equivalent, if you see, than when the computer started and everybody started to write very small pieces of code and share it in the clubs, in the computer clubs. Right now, we are in the same stage. We are learning what can be done, how that behaves, what is possible, what is not possible. And in some way, how to create that, you did a very nice use of GitHub to do the repository of all these thinkings and put in there. But it's quite interesting, the difference in my perception, and that's something that I try to validate, that is that when you create code, you expect to have this, you write a code and it's going to do the same things over and over and over. Here, when you create a prompt, it's not necessarily going to reproduce the same thing, because you was talking about that, shuffling the questions, generating in a different way, and the results that we can get may differ in which range, I don't know. That is a very big question that I have in my mind.
Yes, so there is this notion of this language model called temperature. It's sort of like, imagine, molecules, when the temperature is higher, they go crazier, right? And when it's lower, they're more fixed. This notion is also used in AI to change the behavior of the things it generates. And normally you cannot influence that very much if you just use ChatGPT directly, but you can actually, using something called the OpenAI Playground, you can adjust the temperature. It's a little setting. So you can go from very predictable output to crazy output. So it's really interesting to experiment with that. But you can actually simulate it a little bit inside ChatGPT by just asking it for higher temperature results, and you'll get different variants. So that you can influence this. And there are ways, at least through the playground and the API, to put the temperature at 0, and then the results would pretty much always be the same. There would be any variance. But having said that, the ChatGPT by default, in different runs of the IA and other prompts, it can give very, very different results. It just, sometimes it can be startling, like, it gets it right, gets it wrong. It goes in a completely different direction. This is because how the model is built. It generates essentially a word at a time, and so it corners itself. If I, for example, say a sentence like, I travel through, and the computer has to pick the next word, if you say time, then everything else afterwards probably gonna, it's gonna be, might be more hallucinations because it might be about time travel and stuff like this. Or if you say travel through space, it will be something else, right? So the models tend to incrementally corner themselves. And so that's why hallucinations happen. That's why it sometimes just behaves very different than other times, because it just picked a few key words and then now it suddenly it sort of cornered itself. It has to go in that direction, right? And that's why all these hallucinations happen. But you can fix it. If you ask it to do a second opinion, like try something out, then revise it and think about it, or think about it and then revise it, it will actually probably get to a better result. And so this stepwise thinking is a great way to, and a lot of the prompts have that built in to get over this cornering problem and also hallucination problem. So the hallucination stuff is actually very interesting. You can create a prompt that hallucinates, then you can have a part of the prompt that actually evaluates if it's hallucination or not, and another part which fixes it. And that's how you get around hallucination. I don't know if it's very well known. For me, hallucination is one of the most interesting aspects of large language models. It would be a really pity if we lost it. I mean, this allows us to innovate and be creative. And it can be fixed via fact checkers and rewriters. Essentially, what in normal world you have a fact checker and you have an editor, right? So you can simulate that in a prompt too. So I have Construct, for example, has a lot of fact checking and editing capabilities in it, and it's very hard. I have not gotten it to actually hallucinate so far. Sometimes you need to switch it off, right? You want to have hallucination. So I guess I went off in some other tangent now, so I'm not even sure I answered your question. Or
well, I guess there is not I have the perception that we're in a learning process, and that kind of things, and even that the hallucination, that's a much complex thing, because how we believe or how we understand hallucinations, how we can create hallucinations in some way to get some creativity moments in the same way that when we have the inflection point talks, that was you may ask for a crazy question, then get the people out of the box and you start generating very creative ideas, and then how you landed that and bring it back. This subject of conversation is a very, very hard to think about that, how you can do that, how you generate value. For instance, in the sense that early Nasli was saying, in the community college is an artificial intelligence group or community or things like that. I can imagine that the schools could have some communities that are going to be very much using AI to provide crazy ideas in how to revolutionize the education, and the other people is going to be very, very much conservative and more into how to regulate AI. And the two things are valid, and human-wise is something that we do every time. People that go into some bias and people goes into another bias, and there is not a right solution for everything.
Right. Talking about Nasli. Nasli, do you want to say hello? I see you've added a whole bunch of comments here, but I've been distracted with talking to other people, so Nasli, are you there? Can you speak? Or are you in a class?
I have no audio. She
Yeah.
says that.
Oh, she has no audio. So Tracy is also in a meeting or something. Is he? Oh, Tracy, a friend of Andrew. That's great. So. Okay, I'm just looking through the conversation here. Did I miss something?
No, I
Yeah.
guess has been a great conversation. I also have to run, but that was a great learning insights. Too many things to be keeping learning about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Vidal, you just want to say hello quickly?
Hello, how's it
Hey,
going?
hey, man.
Hey, how
Um,
are you?
so I need to apologize to you. We were supposed to meet this week and talk a little bit more.
I could set some time, like
Yeah.
next week, whatever works for you, Hannes.
Yeah. I managed to catch up with some other people.
Okay.
But the week just ran away from me. So you know how it is. So how's your project going, actually?
Well, you know, I'm continuing to work on it and advance it. What I'm really trying to do, I'm trying to get like some partnerships with people. I found that a little bit difficult. So some people are kind of skeptical, you know, that I'm building this kind of AI co-pilot to help job interviewers. So one of the things I want to do is work with I'm reaching out to some nonprofits and different groups to see if I can get them enrolled. And then I'm also helping a friend of mine one day a week to attempt to use AI to do intake forms. He has like a healthcare product. This came up at the last meeting. Someone else was also working on this. So yeah, I'm playing with lots of different things, you know, improving my product, trying to, you know, find product market fit, talk to people. You know, I've been using your tools to try to, you know, come up with, you know, new ideas.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're plugging along. We're plugging along.
Good. Forward progress. I think
Yes.
Nancy, you might have joined us. So on your phone, I think.
Yes, hi.
Hi, we see your face. How are
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
good. Yeah, I was just trying to give my feedback because I actually visited the community college. I live in Miami,
Mhm.
and the Miami-Dade Community College North Campus has an AI department, and we've met twice, and it's mind-blowing the networking that you do there. They spoke about quantum computers, of like the future of AI as a whole. There's a book that was suggested to read called Scary Smart, which is really scary.
Uh-huh.
I'm currently reading it, and it's like I think I'm like having nightmares, so I had to stop reading it because it's so in depth of like the future of AI. So but me personally, I am using it for my branding, for my like you know, like those projects that you want to do, like you were saying, like these ideas that we have in our heads that they just stay in our heads. And I've found that it's really informative, and but you also go in a rabbit hole that sometimes you can't get yourself out of it. So
Right.
I think that having these conversations and having these like meetups can kind of like get a focus on what it is that we're doing, what are the steps that we're taking, and get accountability and partnership through here would be great, because I think that we get in our heads too much and then we don't end up doing anything. So that's what I'm looking for, kind of like accountability, helping, you know, keep the focus on the prize.
Right. So curious, how did you learn about innovation algebra?
We're in a branding AI course, and one of the members on there mentioned your meetup in the group chat, the meetup that we had yesterday. No,
Okay.
sorry. No, we had it on Tuesday. and she's like a friend of a friend of yours. I don't know her name right now because it was so fast. It's just an hour, but I can get her name when I sign in to her for the next time. I'll let you know.
Yeah, we're always looking for more people to have interesting conversations with, and just share knowledge, get to know people. So,
Yeah.
let people know what you think, right? So,
Right. And I think that also as we've been taught as a culture and a society that we need to be specialist. And I think that now with AI, we can be generalist and make and monetize out of it, since it gives us the ability to study and learn so fast and
Right.
get information faster. So I think that generalist economy, which is a digital and creator economy, is the future. And if we don't jump on the bandwagon right now and understand that we need to work together to move forward, we need each other. We can't do this alone because it's just too massive and too big. And if this technology gets in the hands of the wrong people, it's just gonna it's dangerous. So
Briscoe, you're smiling there.
The hands of the wrong people, like you trying to destroy the universe or destroy the galaxy by blowing up the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the interesting thing is, okay, so it's just words on a screen, right? And the ideas that it comes up with, sometimes I think, oh, okay, it's cool, it's something. But we discussed it in a previous meetup, was that now you have a machine that generates an infinite number of ideas for you, and you have to decide which ideas you actually want to follow. And the rest, which you think might interesting, who are you going to tell, right? You need to tell them, somebody like, listen, here's the idea. And you have to beg. Here's a good idea. Please do something with it. It could be useful to someone, right? So it's a different situation. So, and the problem is tomorrow you'll probably have 10 better ideas, right? So AI is just sort of this thing that just,
yeah,
it's crazy.
that is the problem. You have 10 better ideas.
Right. And so it's like, you have a fantastic prompt, you give it away today, and tomorrow the prompt is 10 times better, right? So it's
yeah. I want to amplify one thing Nasli said about people becoming generalists. That's what we kind of modeled in our future of work sessions that we sort of noodled on earlier. I think Natalia brought it up. I thought about it too. I'm sure Vidal has thought about it. All those niche specialist skills will become generalized. I don't see how they cannot be generalized at this point, seeing as how we can see that the AI can handle this a lot, in a lot of ways better than a human could do it.
Yeah, it just sort of flattens the organization, right?
It makes it flat. It makes it better. If you're not a corporate climber like me, I mean, I tried for many years, and I realized I'm just not a corporate climber. It's not my thing. I'd rather do other things, no more noble pursuits, like this.
Yeah. So my speculation is like, hey, companies are going to get smaller, right? Because you don't need so many people anymore, for sure. You don't need to go and work for Google to find all the PhDs and stuff like this to talk to. You're going to have them right in the computer to talk to. You're going to say, oh, today I'm going to be HR person. Tomorrow I'm going to be VP of marketing. Then I'm going to do engineering, right? I'm just going to jump around.
Yeah.
So it's a great new age for the solo entrepreneur and small startup. For the large companies, it's a nightmare. Imagine, Briscoe, you being dropped into GE again, and going up to the VP of engineering or something. Hey, yesterday I was using ChatGPT and I came up with this thing, and here's a piece of code that works. And the guy would probably just go nuts, right? So the whole hierarchical notion of an organization is under serious threat from people like us that are that are just going nuts, right? I mean, Vidal, you're right in that area, right? So I mean, it's probably one of the issues that people you talk struggle with, right?
Totally. I mean, like very small team of software engineers can do a lot. I mean, I can do a ton by myself I couldn't do before.
It's insane, isn't it? Like even from a year ago or 2 years ago, the cost to go to market with a new app is like almost nothing compared to, you know, $50,000, $100,000 just scoping it. I remember I spec'd an app, and they came back with like a $250,000 price tag, just to do the scoping. I thought that was like 6-7 years ago, and now that same project would be like next to nothing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then just, you know, you can just use, like Hannes, you can use ChatGPT to like just help you brainstorm stuff that maybe you're not an expert in, you know, like I'm asking it to give me ideas, you know, what should the pricing be? What should the trial
Yeah.
be? You know, what should the marketing copy be? Review my email, you know, to these people.
Yeah.
Like,
But, I mean, we know we can do all this stuff, but I think the core question is, in this really old world of a very hierarchical organization, where you're stuck in your little silo and your boss doesn't want you to replace him or anything like that, or come up with ideas that are out of your lane. Now everyone is out of your lane. I mean, it's like chaos in a large corporation, right? That's probably why they say don't use ChatGPT, because we don't want to upset all the middle managers and CEOs with crazy ideas, right? I don't know.
You're right. It definitely gonna upset those swim lanes. I hate that, man. I got lectured on that, like being out of your swim lane. So yeah, this is totally gonna mess that up.
It negates that for sure. One thing I love about the AI personas, they're very cheerful collaborators. I work with my AI lean team of marketers, and we all work together, and they're very happy to work together. Whereas, you know, people cross functionally in a corporate environment are kind of grouchy about working together.
Yeah. Hello,
Well, to your
Tracy.
point, Hannes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say hello to Tracy.
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, because I work for a pretty large company, but I work on luxury brands in the wholesale end of the market. So I work mainly in sales, but since, and I'm the one that she got the prompt from, or the invitation from. There's a professor from, I forget where he's from, if he's from China or not, that does
Larry Wade, right?
No, not with you guys.
Oh.
In this other branding course that is helping people understand ChatGPT. And I knew that he would probably love to understand what you guys are all doing. So I had shared it with him. And then, you know, I was also sharing it with everybody in the class, which I'm sure this has been way over a lot of people's heads. But my company, yeah, they are totally against anybody utilizing stuff internally. Like I keep asking like our internal marketing department, because they're still doing things so old school. Although Essilor did come out with AI generated lens technology. I think that just hit the market in June or July. So I know they're using it on the technology end, but not utilizing it in the sales and marketing. And I mean, it's for marketing purposes. Oh my God, the amount of stuff that I can do. Like I have a full-time job, plus I'm working on projects all over the place for other people. Yeah, it's amazing. And then I just got asked to be part of a startup and do their kind of sales and marketing stuff. And I mean, ChatGPT is my friend, and I have to do a global presentation on marketing in the digital era. And, you know, that's going to be a lot of it too, is utilizing AI. And then I'm thinking of, and this is a lot of this thing that I'm doing in this branding and course stuff, is design a course for these people of learning how to use all these AI tools for themselves. Because that's right. A lot of people don't want to, like you're talking about the small companies, they don't want to hire all of these different people, or they don't have the money to hire all of these different people. So they're taking courses to learn the stuff themselves. So they need somebody to teach them what tools to use and how to utilize the tools. And so, but Andrew just showed me all of your stuff like 2 weeks ago. And I'm also a tournament bridge player. So finding the time between, so that's how I know Andrew.
Okay, cool. That's great.
And I live in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I
So-
love Andrew. I've worked with him.
He was on
for
earlier.
decades.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that I can fault him for, he always wants to talk about bridge. Right?
It's addicting once you get into it.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah. So.
But right now, all you want to talk about is AI.
Well, it is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in my
It's
lifetime.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
since
I'm
the
a
beginning of
different
this
person.
year.
I'm a
Right.
different-
Since the beginning of this year, my mind has been crazy. I have I think 8 different journals going with ideas and things that I've been working on. It's been so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
And as you said, things that would cost so much money before, you can do much less expensively. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so Briscoe is also into digital marketing. It's been creating whole teams of virtual minions to help him with stuff.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I need to touch base with you.
Yeah.
I could share one right now. You guys want to take a look.
I'm driving. Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna drop the URL here. This is just the MVP.
Okay.
Something to play with. There, I'll share it for the rest of the group for.
Okay. Yeah, because I do so much marketing stuff and.
This is one like you said. There's so many good ideas. It's hard to focus on any of them. So I had to start kind of small with my ghostwriter. The MVP.
And what does it do?
What's that?
And what does it do?
So the fully functioning version analyzes your writing. You send it a sample paragraph, and it will write in your style. If you just prompt chat without giving it much direction, you get more or less the same exact thing that everybody else can get, and that's not very interesting. So what I think is more interesting is if you write in different styles. So I've kind of worked on analyzing writing and then combining it in a very simple way. I think earlier in the conversation, people were talking about how do I make this accessible to people, to broad audience, that are not sophisticated. So I've kind of dumbed down this really basic UI here. So you can kind of write anything. And right now I only have these kind of prepackaged ghosts. I've done a lot of analysis to build these ghosts. These prompts, by the way, were all built with the IA self-prompting and optimizing. I think I used the alpha prompt and went down a ridiculously long rabbit hole with the archetype prompt. If you want to burn an afternoon playing with prompts, go to the IA or the site and look through the toolbox there.
I know. I spent a couple hours the other day.
Yeah. So I'm just going to grab here. I'll grab some text here and pump it in a ghost. So here you just write something, dictate it, and you could change. Here we'll make it an email. When I was in marketing, I used to write a lot of sales emails. I used to write scripts for and dialogues. It was extremely time consuming. So I once AI came out and I could see, wow, I could automate this. I'm never going to do that again. And I'm always going to automate it from now on. So here we've got, I've taken some sample text and I've turned it into something suitable for an email, and I've got nerdy ghostwriting, and I can do sassy ghost.
So I have an issue with my company right now. So
Okay.
I went to engineering school and the ratio was 8 men to 1 woman. I played
Yeah.
on an all men's soccer team.
Yeah.
So I am a female in a very, fluffy, I work on the Chanel luxury brand in a mostly female environment. And
good.
I am way too direct. So I need this thing to soften up every single email I do, because, and I just try to explain to them, I'm like, I'm not, it's weird that I ended up where I am. I mean, and so that would be amazing for me to take my really short, succinct, to the point emails and make them really super fluffy,
you can drag them
and
out. You can turn them into a different
fluffy
voice.
bullshit.
Yeah, you can turn it into a different voice. You can take the same text, turn it into a social post. I mean, you can basically do anything with it. I mean, it's very simple UI. You can add an audience and it will, tailor it to, say, we're going to do a memo. We're going to take the same text, turn it into a memo. I've got nerdy.
That's pretty cool, Briscoe.
Yeah. So is this up and running? Is this up and running now?
This is running. This is live right now.
Okay.
Are
you hoping to eventually sell it or monetize it in any way?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm doing it for fun.
I'm not done building it. Yeah, this is really just what I can do type of a project right now. I'm about a third of the way. This is like the very basic MVP, which is still pretty cool. But I have a little bit more building. Maybe by the time we have our next meetup, I can demo it properly, where it's fully featured. And I mean, I'm obviously hoping to make something out of it. Anyway, if I've written an entire book based on my ghostwriter, and I mean, I'm just dictating to it, and it writes the copy. I've done a full.
Does it fill in? Do you give it the idea? Yeah. Do you give it the ideas?
Oh, I dictate to
it.
It just writes. It's not contributing.
Okay.
In fact, I had to do a lot of negative prompting. I wanted to introduce that concept, Hannes. When you had your branches, the one thing that I have to do is negative prompting to curb the intuition that's baked into chat where it starts to hallucinate, because it's wants to be intuitive and anticipate what you're doing. And I had to introduce negative prompting to stop it from doing that. And I had to reprompt my negative prompts. Once it starts going off the rails, you reprompt it, do a couple of negative prompts, and it gets right back. The challenge with doing long form content, like my 100-page book, is that after 5 or 6, maybe 10 pages, it totally forgets what it's doing, or it adds characters, or it does something completely unpredictable that I do not want.
Did you hear about this book called Whist?
About what?
This book called Whist.
No.
Like the card game Whist?
Yeah, somebody wrote a book called Whist. It's totally AI generated. It's a comic book. I think it's called Whist. And it actually, I don't know if it's on the New York Times bestseller list or something. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So who did your art then? Did you do AI generated art for the graphic novel?
Oh yeah. I can share a little bit of that.
Yeah, because that's actually what I've also
if you're curious to see what.
Oh no, I do a lot of that. I could show all kinds of stuff. Then I'm taking what I've created now, and now I've added in my voice in the voice generator. I just did my own voice.
Yeah.
And it sounds.
Hey, Briscoe, have you seen this book GPT project? to generate try to generate longer form books?
What's that? Is it
Have you seen this book GPT project on GitHub to generate? So he has this.
I have not.
Okay, I've tried it. It's pretty cool. So what he has, and I've tried doing this too manually. Basically just have it generate an outline and all this, and kind of the last each section, and give it kind of the last couple sentences of the last section and what this section should be about, to try to deal with that idea that you can't keep the whole book in context.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
You tried those techniques, I assume.
Yeah, I've solved a few things reasonably well. One thing I wanted to do with novel writing was that the character archetype that Hannes developed, you can actually give if you're writing fiction, you can give your characters personalities, AI personas, and then have them talk to each other and come up with a scene after they learn enough about their character, after they've seen some of the books. It'll simulate, okay, here's what these characters would say in this scenario, which I was completely fascinated by.
That's cool.
I know, it was very cool. I mean, I kept thinking, if for Game of Thrones, if you liked Game of Thrones and you saw that last season, I kept thinking, if they were AI characters and you asked them, is this what you would do? I think Jon Snow would be like, hell no, I wouldn't do that. I would do this, this, and this. That was at my head, you've built this character out, and now you have them tell you how the story goes, or you have them tell you how they would do their dialogue. And that was really, really, that was a mind-blowing session right there.
Is this
cool.
This universal archetype?
Yeah, universal archetype. I put 2 characters into it. It learned after a page of a sample page of text, a little character biography, it was able to simulate scenes together with these characters. And then it'd say, okay, now it's a boy and a girl. Okay, now she meets another guy and he's all heartbroken but doesn't want to tell her. It was a really complex scene that they were able to simulate together.
I think it's the beyond the future, the beyond the knowledge frontier stuff that brings that in, because that part of the prompt simulates all sorts of futuristic scenarios and all sorts of weird scenario interactions where some things affect other things, or if this thing happened, then that thing couldn't happen. It's all these really weird rules in there. And so that, I mean, when you showed it to me the first time, I thought, oh, well, I never thought I would use it for character development, but it makes sense, right? Character development is about the future, and so you need to reason about it, what's going to happen. I mostly use it for tech stuff, but maybe it's even better to use it for stories, right? Maybe you have $1 billion idea right there. You're gonna
Explore your creativity.
Yeah, totally nuts. So,
Yeah.
Hey guys, so it's 11, so that is a good 2-hour meeting. The longest one we've had so far is 4 hours. So normally we don't stop the meeting until people get tired. So the question is anyone tired at this point? Had enough? Or do you want to continue and talk about other things? I'm happy to stay, it's no problem. So if you want to talk about your projects or have questions or anything like that, so it's a good time to share ideas.
I'm gonna head out, but I will catch you guys later.
Yes, Vidal, I will get back to you, and we should talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I wanted to pick Brusco's brain a little in the marketing realm of AI. So I actually working on a 1-person business model, which is
that's what Hannes and I are doing too.
Awesome.
The zero budget go-to-market plan.
Yeah. So I follow Dan Coe. I would highly recommend if you guys have any other resources. He's amazing in how to explain the whole 1-person business model. But I think that AI is such a, like I said before, but I guess my question is how, like we said before, we have 500 different ideas, and like can't, but will we need a template to work from? Because I believe people are willing to pay for kind of like a study, like a case study of like, okay, Hans organized this case study of like one person business model enthusiast. I'm just saying out loud. That have different niches. Hans can be an architect, Briscoe can be, we all have one specialization, but we're actually generalists. Just to give an example, I'm an accountant, so I work with different, like I have do the books for different companies, investor, roofing, et cetera, et cetera. And in my 20 years experience, I realized that our health is basically deteriorating entrepreneurs because I am always in the middle of like this chaotic situation of owners not understanding employees, employees not understanding employers. It's just a mess. So for me, I use my knowledge of finance, but I try to educate people on their health. Like we cannot keep on with the economy that we have if we don't start understanding that our health needs to be a priority. And then I also use sustainability. So I have these 3 pillars that I niche down on, but in reality, I have a whole sector of generalist specialties that I've actually gotten a certificate. Like I went to school for health coach. I got my blood work specialist, and I do numbers for a living. So not just the numbers of a business, but the numbers of the individual. And that's how I've been able to market myself as the numbers girl. But using AI is completely like, it's amazing. It'll give you the ideas, but then how do we break that down into gullible content that people can like, and that is the key.
So I don't know, did you see some of the videos from the last meetup titled AI is my co-founder?
I'm actually going to watch them. You send me the link.
Yeah, so the idea behind AI is my co-founder is actually very simple. Is the idea that each person has a personal knowledge capsule. So you write down if all your weird and wonderful skills that you have in a document. Actually on the website, there are examples of templates for, I think we had 3 different studies, from somebody sort of an MIT type to a person that was just being entrepreneurial and sort of stuck in retail at the moment. So it's a like very, very diverse scenario. So we have profiles, personal knowledge capsules for each of those. And the more details you provide, the better. And then you just literally run it through any of the tools that we have. The brainstorming, the IA 2.7, alpha prompt, and there's examples. You can go through all of them. I'll actually do this next week. I'll republish them in a better format to read, but you can actually take exactly your situation with all your weird constraints. Like, you might say like, listen, I can only work 1 hour a day. I only have $5 to my name. I don't have an arm, or I'm blind, or I'm in jail. You can literally put the craziest scenarios together, run it through these tools, and they actually give sensible advice. And if you give details about your business, will actually tell you how to market yourself. It literally just does it. The only work you need to do is write your knowledge capsule, and once you do it, it's like a free resource, right? You can just do whatever you want. And I think the reality is that a lot of solos are just very limited in what they can do. And so you need an AI to work amongst all these constraints and all the special skills you have. And it might just come up with something interesting, an interesting blend of your skills to market yourself, right? So
right. Yeah, and I think that I heard it on a from I can share the video with you guys. He talked about social, technological forces that we have now with AI, and you were just mentioning about policies. And now it's the time to kind of create policies to bridge the economical gap. I think that that is something that I bring to the table, as in how can we change the way not just we do business, but how we have AI as a power tool to kind of brand ourselves as these, you know, not just as an accountant or like niching down on what it is, but we can be more, you know, it's not just generalist, it's different languages. Now we have a power to going into like I speak Spanish, and when I talk about AI, they're looking at me like I'm the robot, and I'm like, hold up, like I'm not even.
Yeah.
That's my mom.
Like, hold on, like what are we doing here? Like, oh, we don't want to do that. Like, we're not going into that. And I'm just like, why? Like, why are we not using it how we're supposed to? So I think that for me is creating a community using, I love that notion that Daniel was showed us, because I have a similar Notion template that I've been using to kind of teach AI for high schoolers, and I've used it as a template to kind of synchronize my brain into the Notion pages. And if you're willing to look at it, I would love some positive feedback, because I think that as generalists, we have so many ideas, and if we don't get those things out and go through the Dan Co has like a free idea generator process using Notion, which is amazing. And I've been able to niche, like I've been able to create my projects and understand. And this is how I got into these 3 pillars through his process, which is the genius, genius thought-provoking. You dissect it and then you create content around it. So I think it's really powerful. I'll send you guys the link. And it's also a culture thing. It's like we don't really like I have to do content in Spanish and in English. So for me, I'm just like, I don't know how the Hispanic culture will I'm trying to find the 1-person business model where you guys yeah, we're here. Okay, let me save, share, copy.
Yeah, so if you're interested in, you know, just being a solo entrepreneur and so on, the last meetup was quite an interesting one, and a lot of people found that very valuable. And there are lots of examples there about, you know,
okay, I'll watch it
and stuff. Yeah, so it's a good starting point. And I'm planning to build out a little bit that you know, the notion that individuals with AI can do way more than you imagine, right? You just have to be brave. And it's even better teaching other people to be brave, right? So soon we'll have entrepreneurs all over the world doing crazy stuff. And that's really happening. That's actually, there's a really interesting talk. Adi, the guy from India in education, gave an amazing talk. It's incredibly inspirational. How kids in India are using AI to innovate. So
yes, and that's why I opened the high school. And I thought what interesting you were saying about earlier in the meeting about the reading part, that America has the lowest reading score. They can't comprehend it. The reading abilities in the States is bad. It's specifically for me as a Hispanic American. I witness kids trying to learn and not comprehend what they're reading. For me has been like, how are they going to grasp what AI can help? How AI can help them when they can't read a prompt?
or they can't. So I started the program intentionally with the high schoolers, not talking to them at all through the course. I don't want to have a conversation with you. Like, I don't even want to see you. I want to see how much you can do using the prompts from AI. And I want to see how you generate ideas through using AI. And I give them the tools, and some of them grabbed it and ran with it, and some of them are like, oh, well, you didn't give me any information, like this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, well, if you would have read, you would have known.
Yeah,
And-
it's challenging, right? It's just the reality of our work today. So guys, I think I'm gonna shut it down now, since we're over 2 hours now. So thanks for showing up, really appreciate it. Always good to have new people show up. You know, come again. We're very open and inviting, and you know, come and contribute to our conversations. Normally, I mean, this is a sort of a very open conversation today. As I said, normally there's more formal, but then afterwards people chat as long as they want. So and that's why the meetings are so long. So
Awesome.
you're
Thank
a chatter.
you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Briscoe.
Thanks, Honest.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Nice meeting you, and talk to you next time. Cool. See ya.
Yes, likewise. Have a great weekend.